My name is Eelco Grimm. I'm one of the founders of Grimm Audio, and you are listening to the Grimm Audio LS1be, which is the new model that we have. We now have 3 models, all of the same concept of LS1. The LS1 concept is that we have everything in our own under our own control by integrating the amplifiers, the DSP, the converters, everything into one single enclosure. We can do things that you cannot do analog. Things like correcting the response of the drivers in a smart way, applying optimum crossover. For instance, if you normally have a crossover with analog components, you do not take into account the fact that the drivers themselves roll off. So your crossover will have an additional roll off of the drivers. So we first make the drivers very linear, the woofer till high frequencies for your side, and the tweeter down to low frequencies, and then we apply the crossover. So the crossover becomes optimal, like the ideal acoustical crossover. We have a wide baffle in the LS1 series, so the majority of frequencies is projected in the same acoustic space. So the lower harmonics and the higher harmonics all have the same room treatment, so to say, as the higher harmonics. And normally, if you have a more shallow speaker, the higher harmonics are still projected, but the lower harmonics are radiated omnidirectionally, and they will get more acoustics and sound differently. One of the advantages is that this speaker behaves very well both in small rooms and in very large rooms. We've used them in the auditorium without any problem. So it's very versatile. They behave like small, or they behave like large speakers, but they are still pretty small speakers and easy to place. You're listening now to a 3-way system. So that's the subwoofer. It's not the amplifiers, it's a subwoofer. You can also use the system as a 2-way. In the back of the room, there's the 3 models that we now have, and one of them is set up as a 2-way system. It's just a flip of a switch in the software, whether you want a 3-way or 2-way. It's not an additional sub running along with a 2-way system. It is a genuine 3-way system, also with a phase corrected crossover, so it behaves as if there's just a single driver running without any extra phase deviations. The only thing that you need, except for what you're looking at here, is a controller for the volume. That's the black box over there. And there's also a tiny USB interface that you can use to connect to a computer. At the moment I'm playing from a Linux server with Rune Labs, but you can use any laptop with JRiver or what you like. There's 3 additional digital inputs. For instance, we have this CD transport that you connect to a digital input. And then there is also analog inputs if you have a preamplifier for your vinyl, for instance. Okay, now I come to the new model, the LS1be. The BE stands for beryllium, and that's the main thing that you can see here. We have a newly developed beryllium tweeter in cooperation with CS. This was not in their catalog, this tweeter, because we wanted this little horn. As you can see, it's also on the original LS1 that's still in our catalog. But this is the DXT tweeter of CS that's in their catalog, but we wanted that same horn, but with a beryllium membrane, which is lighter and stiffer and needs less corrections. It sounds more smooth. That also gave us the opportunity to remove all the visible screws to mount the tweeter. And then we had this new Hymax cabinet where we did the same for the woofer, because we now mount it from the inside. And that gives a more handsome result in the loops. Next came the electronics. We tweaked the electronics a bit in component choice and a few bits and pieces that we thought if we would have a flagship product at a higher price, that would really be worthwhile to do. And then I come to the most important difference with the standard LS1, and that's the new subwoofer that we developed. This one is called the LS1S DMF, and DMF stands for Digital Motional Feedback. And that's what we did. We revisited the motional feedback concept made famous by Philips in the 1970s. So that means we mounted a sensor in the cone of the subwoofer, and that sensor monitors the movement of the woofer, and we can compare that signal with the actual input signal, and then we can see if it deviates from the signal as it should have been, and we can correct for that in a feedback loop. And that way we can attenuate the distortion. Now the old Philips system had 10 decibel of distortion attenuation. We reach 30 decibel of attenuation of distortion. So it's extremely tight. That's also what you can hear, what you just heard on that recording. Upright bass, big drums from the orchestra, they sound more tight and more natural as you've ever heard. So we're very proud of this development, and we are listening to the sub now for the first time because it was just finished last week, and it performs spectacularly good in our own experience, so we were very happy.